This is Dr. Serge King bringing you a discussion on Huna entitled Higher Self-Awareness. Now, the higher self, as most of you know, most of you already being students of Huna, has a number of different names that have been given to it. Names that describe its function, describe its nature. The most common name that you know is Aumakua. And Max Long gave that a general translation as utterly trustworthy parental spirit. Now, that was good. The idea was that it was totally trustworthy, that you could put all your faith and trust in it to do what it does. The idea also was that it was a parental spirit, meaning it was your source, the source of your being here, and it was a pair, that it was both mother-father, if you like, or male-female. And it was spirit. Spirit in the sense of, in the broad sense of a divine energy that moves in and through everything. Only your personal Aumakua is your personal aspect of that spirit, which is throughout everything, which you might say is ultimate God or Kumu. Okay, when it's personalized, then it's Aumakua. This is your higher self, part of your total being. And in any kind of development work that you're doing, even if you are programming for, improving your life in any kind of way, you can learn how to do programming and not pay attention to the higher self, and you can get results. But your results are going to be not as full and not as complete and not as fulfilling as they could be if you join yourself with this other aspect of yourself. So most people, when they start getting into programming, and sometimes even in quite spiritual organizations, get into visualizing and demonstrating and treating and all these other things that they talk about, somehow seem to forget this God within, which is doing all the work. Now, what I'd like to present tonight is something that you probably will not find written up any place so far. I may come out with it in a book that comes out next year, but these are a couple other words for the higher self. A couple other words that mean the same thing as Aumakua in Hawaiian. And I want to show you a little breakdown of these words and how these tell us a little bit more about the nature of the higher self. One of these words is Kumu Pa'a. Now that's Kumu Pa', one word. Kumu Pa'a. And that's a word that in Hawaiian is used interchangeably for Aumakua. And what does it mean? Well, the first part here is Kumu. Also, let's take the whole word. Kumu Pa'a has another meaning besides Aumakua, as many of these words do. It means firm foundation. It means ancient times. Firmly established. And here's a nice one. It also means principle or capital as opposed to interest. Okay? Getting the same thing. This is the basic stuff. That's the concept being carried across there. This is really the basic stuff. Firm foundation? Yes, it is the firm foundation of your being. This conscious mind that you have, that you are focused in right now, very narrowly focused most of it, is not firm. You know yourself it is. Changes feelings and changes perceptions and grows in awareness and sometimes narrows in awareness. This isn't something firm. The Aumakua, that higher self, that spirit, that God within you, is the firm foundation of your being. Ancient times refers again to this idea of the Aumakua, or the higher self, being in a sense parental. being a source self. Ancient times refers to the past out of which the future or the present and the future grows. While the Almakua, the higher self, is, in a sense, your past, in a sense, out of which you have grown. It represents your source. And principle, capital, that basic stuff, as I mentioned before. We start taking the words apart, and we take this word kumu up here. This means, the word by itself means basic. It means hereditary. There you get, again, something coming, source. Foundation. It also means teacher, manual, model, or pattern. And it means beginning, source, origin, cause. It also means reason, or the reason something happened, the cause, the reason it happened. Yes, well, this is very definitely, you get some ideas in there about the nature of the higher self. Besides the foundation and the base there, the model, the pattern, that's very important to realize. There you have a basic blueprint to your being, which was established by your higher self. Now, through the course of life, a part of us, a deep inner part, usually that's the ku, that body-mind part that has this knowledge in its own being too, is trying to follow that blueprint. Overlaid on that blueprint are the cultural beliefs of the society and the times that you're born in, some of which can be very different from that blueprint. Because part of what that blueprint says is you are a perfect being. You are designed for happiness, for joy, for creativity, for fulfilling your potential. But now, you willingly came in, you may not think willingly right now, but it was willingly at the time. You willingly came into this particular culture, particular time and place, because of the very challenges that are posed here. And you came in to undertake those challenges and to try and see what you could do with your blueprint and this, let's call it cultural overlay. And some people chose greater challenges than others for different reasons and different kinds of challenges. But that's all in here with the idea of Kumu, with the idea that your higher self has set up the model, has set up the pattern, the overall pattern for your life. You came in with a mission to accomplish something. That's set up by the higher self. And you'll accomplish it whether you ever learn what it is or not. The second part of this word, pa'a, that's a very common word in Hawaiian, has a lot of different meanings. But interestingly, among the meanings are firm, solid, fast, fixed, secure, steady, permanent. Similar meanings to kumu in some ways. Also whole, complete. This is definitely what your higher self is. This is your whole self. This is your complete self. Determined and strong and vigorous. Well, determined gives a sense of the will there, and strong and vigorous is your natural state. When you are off of that, when you don't feel strong and vigorous, when you do feel, weak and incompetent and all these kinds of things, it's because of beliefs that you have accepted and not because you're naturally that way. In your natural state, you have that health, you have that vigor, you have that life within you. This word brings that out. This is good too. It also means versed in something or in something. Skilled. Adept, if you like. So there you get kumu, meaning teacher, manual. You get pa'a, meaning to be learned in, to learn. You get the role then there of the higher self, is to teach, and interestingly, to learn. Now you here as a conscious self are learning as well. But see, so is your higher self. Your life is serving as a learning experience for your whole self as well. It's not like it's just coming in here and say, see, this is something I've done 1,000,000 times over, now I want you to do this. No. It really doesn't know how this part of you is going to react. In a way, it's like you have your conscious mind, you decide to take up a skill, a sport or something like that. And when you start to take it up, suddenly you find that your body's just running with it and doing it so easy, and it just amazes you. You've had experiences like that. Well, your higher self can be amazed at you, too, even though you're a part of it, and you're all one together. Your choices that you make consciously become a part of the learning experience of the whole. So you contribute, even when you make mistakes, what you call mistakes. Even when you make errors, even when you go through pain and suffering, you're contributing to the total learning of your whole self. Now this is interesting. This same word also means pair, a couple. Again, emphasizing that idea that the higher self contains, the best thing we can call it in our physical human terms, is both male and female aspects. You and the body that you have right now are simply expressing one of these more than the other. You have both of them as potential within you. But for the various reasons that you decided to undertake this life, you're expressing in this way. Also, here's one, we'll get to another thing a little later. Well, it does mean foundation, pa'a does, and so does kumu. And it means extremity or border. I'll let that one hang for a moment. Just a moment. So kumu, pa'a together, we get an emphasis. Both of those words mean foundation. It's like they're saying, hey, when we say foundation, we really mean foundation. So they string two words together with the same meaning to give a much, much greater emphasis. And you also have the idea of teaching and learning in there. And that's pretty much the base and things like that in kumu pa'a. Now the second word that I'm going to give you also for higher self is au au. Not that kind. A-O, A-O. Apostrophe A-O, apostrophe A-O. The apostrophe is not so important because when we're getting into the code, we can ignore that. Because the Hawaiians did that too very well. Okay, au, au. Now this by itself, as a complete word, besides meaning the higher self, besides meaning au makua, another word that's interchangeable for that, it means side or boundary. I remember the word pa'a also meant extremity or border. Well, here you have this word meaning the same thing. The concept that's being presented here is something that would be used by the kahuna teacher when he's teaching about it, is that the higher self isn't manifested within this reality completely. It couldn't be. It's too large for this reality. Not in physical size, but in concept. And in order to become aware of the higher self, you sort of have to move toward it. In other words, you have to alter your consciousness from the ordinary consciousness that you use in your day-to-day interaction and move to the border, move to what is almost the extremity of this physical world. The reason for this is we are trained and taught in our culture here and in most cultures, and it has a survival benefit to think of this world in objective or separatist terms. And that's a very handy way to do it. It isn't necessarily true, but it's very useful. be a lot of things that we couldn't do, that we couldn't create, that we couldn't make, that we couldn't form if we weren't able to do that. So this is part of what has been the development of our consciousness, has been to make this separation, to separate willingly our mind from our body, our self from our environment, in order to take a different look at it, in order to be able to create in different ways. But some of people then went a little bit too far. And they forgot that they could also go back to a oneness. And that they didn't have to exclude one or the other by going back and forth. You need to get more in a state of oneness, less sense of separation, to reach that, what you might call the border of the higher self. Because it, as we often say, it lives in Po, P-O. Po, in simple terms, is the spirit world, the world of spirit. But really, that's real simple terms. I mean, that's kindergarten stuff. Because this is the world of spirit, too, right here, physically. A better translation for Po would be mind, with a capital M. Or spirit with a capital S, both of which can mean the same thing. And so we say that the higher self dwells in Po. Someone else can come along and say, you mean it's all in your head. Not exactly, no. It is in the mind, and so is everything here, in a sense, all in mind. But we have to alter our consciousness. We have to move to that border, to that boundary of the physical, in order to make good contact with the higher self. That awareness of being a part of it and one with it. Now let's go on to this word, ao. It means group, team. And it gives the indication that the higher self works in groups and as a team with other higher selves. We call this sometimes the Po'eamakua, the great circle of high selves. So there is a cooperation going on in, let's call it, in the world of spirit. That's affecting things in the physical. Ao also means way or habit or mode of living. And again, there you get that plan, pattern, model kind of concept here again. And the idea that your higher self uses your habits in order to manifest your reality. See, that's how your reality is manifested. It is through your habits of thought. That's why that integral cooperation with the Ku, with the Unahipili, with your subconscious is so necessary. Because your higher self doesn't manifest in the physical anything which is not a part of your habitual belief system. This is why you can really want to program for something with one part of your conscious mind and nothing happens. It doesn't happen because it is not in your subconscious. It is not part of your way of living. It's not part of your habit. And so that's why most of the programming goes on, is to establish these ideas, things that you want to bring about as a habit. Then the higher self can manifest. It has to be a part of the subconscious belief system, within the range of that, at least, before it can be manifested. Question about that? Okay. If your higher, it's your higher self that manifests the reality around you, your experience. And it does this through your belief system. Now, if you hear something new that you really like with your conscious mind, and you really think about it a lot, if it is not a part of your belief system of possibility for you to have, doesn't matter how much you think about it, it won't manifest in your life. You may get an equivalent that's possible within the nature of your belief system, because obviously something's there, you were aware of it, So you may see something like what you want on TV, or you may read about it, or somebody that you know may experience it, but you won't, unless the possibility for you doing so is also a part of your habitual belief system. Let's say that I want to experience cosmic consciousness. I think that's a great idea. I'd really love to experience cosmic consciousness. Oh, I'd like to experience it, for instance, to be able to see all the energy flows and sparkles and things that are going around everybody. I'd like to be able to see that. And so you start programming, you start thinking about it, you start visualizing, you start imagining that you can do it. But your subconscious doesn't believe that's possible. In all likelihood, you will run into books about the subject. They may do a TV special on it. You may come to a meeting and some friends or even a stranger you know say, you know what, last week I just experienced cosmic consciousness. But until it becomes a part of your believable reality, you won't do it. See what I mean? Okay. Now also another meaning of owl is plot, advice, or counsel. They're almost the teaching aspect of the higher self. Now, by itself, one of those words, the root AO by itself, here's some meanings. Light, day, daylight, enlightened. Also, to marry. Now, they have a funny little thing in the dictionary that says, this must mean because they stayed all night together until it was light. It doesn't mean that at all. The word ho'au was used in the early days to marry because it meant teaching as well. And the idea was that two people would come together and learn from each other and teach each other and enlighten each other. That was the purpose of marriage. It was also symbolic of the higher self, which is why to marry is a part of this meaning, because the higher self is that pair, already male and female. All right, it means, it's also interestingly, this word owl is used for the night in the calendar, the night of the day called Huna. Now, the 11th day of the old Hawaiian calendar was called Huna. And the night of that day was called owl, of which the meaning is enlightenment. So they knew what they were doing even when they were putting the calendar together. It also means a cloud, the world, the earth. It means to be careful, to beware. And this gives the protective aspect of the higher self. It means the exact image of. There's where you get that use of imagination, the use of visualization. Through this use, through the higher self gives you the exact image of your thoughts and of your beliefs. And that's what you see and experience in the world around you. It also means instruction, teaching, doctrine, learning, advice, counsel. To test, to try, taste, and experiment. Yes? Okay. The question is, have I ever said that the higher self will not tell you what to do? Yes, that's true. But this has to be understood. It won't give you an order, is what I meant by that. Okay? If you ask it, it'll tell you the best things to do, it'll give you ideas, it'll give you advice, it'll flood you with it if you open yourself up to it, but it won't, that's right, it won't make you do it. It'll never make you do it. It'll never say, this is your God speaking, do this. No, higher self doesn't work that way. Or demand, okay, either way. It gives you the advice, you are perfectly free to turn it down. Also means a new shoot, a leaf, or a bud. And I was talking about testing and trying and experimenting. It lets you experiment. That's part of that meaning in there. You are free to experiment. It presents these opportunities and ideas and things around you, and it lets you experiment, trying out different ways of doing things. There's always There are always alternatives to everything. And a new shoot, leaf, or bud has to do with the idea of new growth, of continuing new growth. And the higher self is always giving you this opportunity, always encouraging from within this new growth. Now, the relationships, we talked about these two concepts of the higher self as they are in the Hawaiian language. The relationship to have with the higher self is something to cultivate. Now, many people have done this under different names. But in some sense of a personal God, in some sense of a guardian angel, sometimes of a saint, people have used these kind of intermediary ideas, which is great as long as it gives you a sense of the personalness of this. The higher self is something within you. The higher self is not up in the sky. You can just use the New Testament for a moment. Jesus never said that God was up there in the sky. The Father's in me and I'm in him, is one thing that he said. And the kingdom of God is within you, is another thing that he said. And you are God, is another thing that he said. God isn't up there. That God, that personal power, that spirit, is in you, is within you. Now that's a big step for a lot of people to try and take, but it's there. And how do you know it's there? Well, when you can feel the energy of your being moving within you, you're feeling that spirit. When you can feel that tingling and that current and that good feeling moving around in your body, you're with it. That's happening. That's happening. Also, when you're feeling that incredible sense of peace and oneness with things, which you often feel in the beauty of nature. An uplifting, a rising, an outward moving of spirit, of your own spirit. That's when contact is made. That's how you know you're at that border, you're at that edge. And the more you contact that, the more you increase this awareness of the higher self, and simply ask, the more you'll learn how he, she can help you in your life. Aloha.